So now that we have learned about composite functions, we can look at a function that is a multi-step function and decompose that function. So let's imagine that we have a function h, and it is f composed with g. So this means that g acts first on x, and then f acts on that. So this is f of g of x. So g of x is found first, and then f is applied to that. So if we look at this picture, our input would come into g, then be outputted, and then that output would go into f, and then we would have a two-stage process happening to our input. G happens first, then f. H is simply the big process seen as just one function. So if we have this function h, and we want to think about it in terms of a multi-step or multi-stage function, then the first thing that we do is we look, okay, g is the inside function. It's the first function being applied. So it's what's being done first to x. And then that goes into f, and then outputs f of g of x. So if you look at this function, what happens first to an input? Let's say that you put in 5. What would you do first to find out the output? 2 times 5 plus 1, and then you would take the square root. So the first step would be 2x plus 1. Then the second step would be take the square root of that result. So this means that g of x is 2x plus 1. It's what happens first to our input. Then f of x is the rule that takes the input and takes the square root of that. And so what we do is we simply take x and put that as our input. So now let's just double check that. So this is our answer. So if we find f of g of x, this is f of g of x. So we would find f of 2x plus 1. And what does f say to do to the input? Whatever the input is, we take the square root of that input. So we would get the square root of 2x plus 1. So again, let's take a look at another example. So in this case, again, g is the first thing that's being done, and then f will be the second thing that's being done. So if we had an input, what is the first thing that's being done to that input? So if we found h of 7, what would we do first? We would have to take 2 times 7 plus 3. So the first step would be to take 2 times x and then add 3. Then the second step would be to find the reciprocal of that, or put it under 1. So now, that means that g of x is going to be 2x plus 3, and then f of x would say, find the reciprocal of that input. So let's look at just checking that out. F composed with g would be f of g of x. But g of x is 2x plus 3. So now the input gets put under 1. So we would have 1 over 2x plus 3, which is exactly what we wanted. So our answer over here is correct.